How's it going, YouTube? Coming today with another video, and today, guys, the brand new is going to be State of the Game. Now, we're definitely in a very interesting position with a lot of huge sets coming out soon, but we do have to understand where we're at right now, and I think that it's a really important conversation because I know a lot of people are really looking for what deck to play. The format is really interesting. I had a conversation with my friend yesterday, and we were talking about how the fire decks really aren't something that are even up either of our alleys, to be honest with you. Playing like the Snake Eye deck or anything like that just isn't something that I'm genuinely interested to play. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of other good options. And then if you do want to be competitive in the format, picking up one of those decks and playing them still does not mean that the deck is going to be like bad for any reason. And it is something that you overall can learn, right? But sometimes you get into formats where like you don't really vibe with any of the decks. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. But we're going to talk about a lot of the different things that we have coming up. So I do hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you want to check out my sponsors over on Imperium, Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, RAW, Grimoire, ChainLink, or my Patreon, definitely go ahead and check it all out down below in the description. And without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about the video. The first thing I have for you is going to be, is Orcus good? So Orcus is a really interesting one. The deck itself plays a ton of bricks, and I don't really feel like the deck is that crazy. Yeah, once you get fully established, you have a lot of really nice grind, but I don't think that that means that we actually run these cards. I do think that we will see this deck at some point in a top cut, but it's not that good. I know a lot of people are still trying to make like Striker Orcus work. We're seeing a lot of like the PK variants or like the Horus Orcus builds, but it's just not that crazy. So we're definitely going to have to see what the deck can do moving forward. But as of right now, I think that it'd be like a really solid like rogue option. Maybe like a really low tier 2. But that's really giving it a lot of credit. So let's go ahead and see what the deck can do first before we start really trying to place it anywhere, because we're still unsure because the format isn't really developed yet. But the deck itself really is not that strong. How bad did the ban list hurt Rescue? And to be honest, my answer for this is really not a whole lot. I think the 2 Airlifter was definitely like a little unfortunate. But at the same time, you still have 1 and 3 Emergency. So the deck is still hyper consistent alongside the Wanted Engine. It's kind of like the flip-flop, because it's like when we had 3 Airlifter but no Emergency, now we have the 1 Airlifter, 3 Emergency, but now we also have the Wanted Engine. So it's like even more consistent than what it was before Emergency. So I do think that this is going to be fine, because even with 1 Airlifter, it's still hyper searchable. So I'm not really too concerned about this deck not being like playable or anything. I think that it's still really strong and one of the best decks that we have at the moment. But I don't really think the Airlifter hurt that bad. I know that it's definitely going to be a little awkward, because obviously opening Airlifter is like amazing to have. But at the same time, I don't really think that it's going to be all end all. Now, is tier dead? So I know a lot of people are really just coping that the deck is just super dead. And I know a lot of people are saying that people are coping because they say the deck's still playable. But I think that when a hit like the Agido and Kelbeck one happens, you have to play the deck differently, and I think that a lot of people write off the deck instead of attempting to play the deck differently. The current builds that I've been testing have been pretty promising. I was already looking ahead to if these cards were banned, and I already posted a list with like AFD, Rev Synchron, and like the Horus Field Spell. And then I also have like other builds coming out too, which are very strong. So definitely still keep testing a deck like this, because it's such a toolbox deck too. So there's a lot of different ways you can play it. There's still no limitations on any of the cards. So I do think that the deck's not dead. I do think that it got hurt for sure, but still not dead. Not dead yet. Sleeper picks of the format. You're going to be surprised by the first one here, but EXO. There's a lot of decks that are really concerned with their graveyard right now. And I think that this is a really good opportunity to go ahead and play this deck, especially when we have Labyrinth with rollback. That's a card they're banishing out of grave. So I think that that's something where a deck like EXO, playing shifters in the main, could really do well at an event. So something that is a very cheap deck right now. Again, this is like $20, $30 for the whole deck. Definitely recommend to go ahead and play this if this is something that interests you. It's a pretty good deck. Same with Kashira. Third Unicorn, honestly, a lot of people were like, who cares? But to me, I'm like, this deck was kind of scary already, and now it's a bit more consistent, you know? This is a deck that also plays the most broken card, somehow dodge the ban list, somehow, Shifter. But another deck that is very scary into the format, very good option right now. Relatively cheap. Fenrir's are pretty low still. They're like 15s. So definitely not a bad pickup as well. Is Wanted worth $112 a piece? It's good, and it's going to be in the next best deck, but realize that if you pick these up right now, you're going to have to pay for Bonfires and Populace. This deck is going to be the closest to Necroz that we've ever had in terms of price. 3 Wanted, 3 Bonfire, 3 Populace, 3 Diabell Star, which is already like 26s a piece. Pretty crazy, pretty crazy. So it's something where just understand that if you do want to pick these up, that there is going to be a larger price tag on this. So there's a lot of other options that you can play. There's a lot of other very good decks. Even Labyrinth. I know big welcomes are up right now, but they're only like 35s, so it's a lot better than what they were. And then Rollback is going to be a playset that you got to get. So definitely still pretty good. Just got to think about that though moving forward, is what you're able to just kind of buy in terms of what you're getting prepared for. Is it worth to pick up the Horus engine? So the Horus engine is still really strong. This is going to have a lot of longevity in the game. It's one of the strongest engines we've ever seen. We are going to be getting more support for this as well in Phantom Nightmare with the field spell and the new boss monster. Definitely something that I think is really good. So I recommend that you go ahead and pick this up. They are like 50s right now. But I do think that when we start seeing the Horus cards really being played, because there's going to be something, right, that pops up that it's just like, wow, these cards are absolutely crazy. And we already kind of saw that in tier, but like I'm sure that these cards are going to get their time in the spotlight. Like something's going to happen. So it's one of those things too where like I'm pretty sure it won't get reprinted for a little while, and they're 50s, so it's probably a pretty safe pickup. I got mine, so I definitely recommend to. I think that they're pretty good. It's a really solid engine. It can go into a lot, so definitely very cool. The next best deck being Labyrinth. This is something that I definitely feel is true. Labyrinth is really scary moving forward. In my builds, I've been running one Morella because you can set Morella off of Lady, and then you can just send anything you want to the graveyard for the rollback, which is really cool. But this deck is going to be a really high ceiling deck. It's something that you really have to be mindful of when you're playing against it, or when you are playing the deck, that there's like a lot of different things going on at one time and a lot of sequencing that you really have to get correct. The deck itself is very scary. Realize there's still cards like Super Poly that really do a lot to this deck. So you kind of have to pick and choose like what you're preparing for this next format. But you definitely want to make sure that you are prepared for Labyrinth, because going into it, it's going to be a very scary deck. Now, my overall thoughts on the format, I would say that there's a lot of cards that dodge the ban list that definitely shouldn't have. Shifter, Prosperity, EEV, which is going to be another really scary card this format somehow made it through. We still have to worry about Centurion a little bit if we do get more support and Calamity gets like a lot more consistent. But we'll have to see when the support comes. Definitely a lot of cards that should have been hit, but at the same time, I think that from playtesting the format, it's been pretty fun. It's a little bit more narrow than what it was because a lot of the better decks got hit really hard. So it's not like super open, but I do think that there's still enough to where the format still feels pretty broad. You probably can still bring any deck you want right now to an event and do well until we get like Bonfire and Populace, because then that deck's gonna be really tough. Bells are really good against that deck. Droll. There's a lot of really specific interactions that you're gonna want to make sure you have. Even Impermavailer on Diabell Star is pretty solid, because the second you let them get to like Ash or Populace, it's gonna be rough. Really good combos off of that deck. They also put up Appaloosa pretty easily, so something else you want to be mindful of. I definitely already thought if we get into like a Horus meta about Ghost Ogre, it's not even like that bad against like the Snake Eye deck either. It's not the best, but I don't know, I've thought about it moving forward. We already hearing about people doing like the Punk Horus Orcus combos and whatnot too, with like E-Tellys and Ghost Ogre. So maybe we do see something like that, but I don't think this format's bad. I think it's fine. I definitely wanted to just get a bit more hits on the ban list. Even though it was pretty big, I don't think that they like addressed everything as they should have, because they kind of just left a lot of things unchecked. And so now definitely odds leaning into other decks favors, but I don't think that it's going to be like super broad. I think the format got a little more narrow, and that's a little bit more for me to work with. So I'm okay with that. Definitely going to be some interesting choices out of me this format. I'm going to see what I can do as far as just playing a completely different deck out of my comfort zone. So it should be a lot of fun. I do think that I'll be able to perform pretty well with that too. A lot of grinding for Vegas coming up, and you know, it's gonna be a really good time. So if you enjoyed the video, definitely go ahead and check out my Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, or if you want a coaching session over at Medify, definitely go ahead and check my link out down below in the description. I hope everyone has a wonderful night. I'll catch you all in the next video. Thank you.